In the modern world, where anyone can craft a flawless version of themselves on social media, truly understanding who someone is has become no small challenge. They can speak beautifully, appear kind and considerate, but you cannot judge a person solely by their words. As the Stoics taught, it is action, especially in small, unexpected moments, that reveals true character. Today's video does not offer tricks to read someone merely to satisfy curiosity. Rather, it invites you into a deeper journey, learning to observe 5 key behaviors that unveil a person's essence. This is not just a tool for understanding others, but a mirror to reflect upon yourself. Because if you wish to live with virtue, you must begin by understanding character, both in the people around you and in yourself. 1. How they speak about others when those others aren't around. One of the most profound ways to recognize someone's true character is to observe how they speak about others when those people are not present, especially when there is nothing to gain from doing so. In those ordinary moments, a side conversation, an informal remark, or a casual response to the mention of a third party, you can often clearly see whether kindness genuinely resides within a person. Because kind words spoken when no one asks, when no one sees, and when no impression is needed, come not from external motives but from inner depth. Such people don't speak well of others to be liked, to score points, or to appear virtuous. They do it simply because it is the right thing to do. A truly kind person sees the good in others, even when it is faint or hidden. They lean toward building rather than tearing down, toward protection rather than defamation, and they offer kind words as a way to preserve fairness and dignity for those not present. You might find them in a simple situation like when someone is criticizing another in their absence. They gently speak up, or rather than joining the disparagement, they choose silence or steer the conversation elsewhere. They don't do it to seem noble. It's simply in their nature. They feel uneasy participating in the harming of someone who cannot defend themselves. Their compassion functions even when no one is watching. What's remarkable is that those with the highest virtue often keep their goodness quiet. They don't need to tell you they spoke well of you to others. They don't need you to know they stood up for you. They don't expect anything in return. And it is precisely this silence that gives their actions weight, because when no one is aware and they still choose to protect someone's dignity, it means they are acting from conscience, not for recognition. Kind words spoken in silence are not only a sign of goodness, but a testament to a self-governing character, one not swayed by external praise or blame. In a world where many behave well only when there is an audience, silent kindness is a rare and precious thing. It speaks to an inner value system that is firm. They do not need outer incentives to do what is right. Their kindness is not limited by situation, not dependent on the recipient, and does not shift with context. They are kind not to be seen as good people, but because this is the path they have chosen to live by. Observing such individuals, you find yourself trusting them instinctively, without needing a reason. And when you walk away from conversations with them, you realize this is someone who keeps their word, honors what is right, and upholds the dignity of others, even when no one asks them to. They are the living proof of a truth Stoicism always emphasized, that real virtue is not found in declarations or promises, but in small, consistent, quiet acts that no one sees. And in that space, you glimpse a person unmasked and genuine. In stark contrast to these quiet acts of kindness is the type of person who frequently speaks with bitterness behind others' backs. This isn't just a bad conversational habit. It's a clear signal of envy, insecurity, and an undeveloped character operating beneath the surface. These individuals often speak ill not for the sake of truth, but to fulfill unmet emotional needs. The need to feel better, to bring others down in order to patch up their own inner inadequacy. What they say doesn't reveal the truth about those they criticize. It exposes the truth about themselves, that they are hurting, envious, or unwilling to accept their own place in this world. When someone speaks ill of another in their absence, it shows they care not for fairness or truth, but only for feeding the ego. Sometimes their words are disguised as honest feedback, sincere sharing, or just recounting facts. But if you listen closely, you'll notice the energy behind those words is not constructive, but corrosive. There is no intent to help the other grow, only the desire to alter the listener's perception for the worse. Such words, even when small, can wound deeply, not because of their content, but because they betray the trust between human beings. Those who backstab others often lack an internal sense of safety. They constantly feel the need to compare, to seize opportunities, to take from someone else's credibility just to stand on their own feet. But in doing so, they reveal that they have no firm values to support themselves. They fear being left behind, fear being overlooked, and instead of improving themselves, they choose the easier route, diminishing the light of others. Yet what they fail to see is that each negative word they utter doesn't just harm the person being spoken about. It erodes their own character. The more envy they spread, the smaller they become, and the further they drift from lasting growth in any relationship. There is one thing worth pondering. If someone is speaking badly about others in front of you, they are likely to speak badly about you in front of others. This is not a call to be paranoid, but a reminder to be mindful. Not of the person being spoken about, but of the one doing the talking. For if someone cannot preserve basic respect for the absent, it is unlikely they will maintain loyalty when you're no longer present in their life. What they say about others is a mirror reflecting what they'll say about you. And on a deeper level, it also reveals how they converse with themselves, with harshness, lack of empathy, and constant doubt. Stoicism teaches us to use what we observe in others as a way to reflect inward. If you notice someone constantly judging, criticizing, or belittling others behind their backs, ask yourself, have I ever done the same? And if so, use that awareness to recalibrate, not out of some lofty moral ambition, but for the sake of inner freedom. Because when you let go of the habit of speaking ill, you also release a piece of your own insecurity. You no longer need to put others down to feel elevated. It is silence, fairness, and compassion that bring you closer to true strength, the kind that needs no boasting to be real. 2. How they treat those who are different. A truly mature person is not someone who agrees with everything, but someone who can maintain respect even when faced with what they do not understand, are unfamiliar with, or disagree with. When confronted with differences in culture, religion, gender, lifestyle, or even small habits, they do not react with quick judgment, but with listening and understanding. They do not need common ground to be kind, nor do they need others to be like them in order to offer respect. It is their ability to approach difference calmly, objectively, and openly that shows they have risen above the defensive instincts of human nature. Instincts that often lead to prejudice, fear, or rejection of the unfamiliar. In an increasingly diverse and connected society, difference is inevitable. A person with a strong character understands that the world does not revolve around their personal lens. Instead of imposing biases or demanding conformity, they choose to observe with a mindset of learning. They realize that people believe what they do not out of ignorance, but because they were shaped by different contexts, values, experiences, and environments. Therefore, instead of reacting with disdain or attack, they ask, why does this person think this way? What in their life led them here? When you can ask these questions, you are stepping outside the narrow circle of ego and entering the realm of reason, compassion, and deep understanding, the foundations of mature character. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Your mind will be unconquerable if you do not allow it to be dragged down by ignorance and prejudice." A mature person is not free of bias, but is alert enough to notice when they are being led by it. They may not agree with you, but they will not belittle you. They may not choose your way of life, but they will not see it as a threat. This is not only a sign of tolerance, but proof of an ego that has been tempered, one that does not need to overpower others to affirm itself. When you interact with someone of this character, you feel at ease and safe, not because they agree with you, but because they allow you the space to be yourself without fear of judgment. It is a quiet form of kindness, yet deeply powerful. And in today's world, it is a kind of wisdom worth admiring. These people do not seek victory in debate. They seek truth through understanding. And that is what makes them trustworthy. Not because they are always right, but because they are always willing to understand. In contrast to the calm and insight of the mature are the reactions of prejudice and attack from those who are still unsettled within. When faced with difference of opinion, belief, skin color, culture, or lifestyle, they do not listen, but react with scorn, mockery, or rejection. They assign labels and insults not because the other person is wrong or harmful, but because the very presence of difference feels like a threat. But if you look deeper into such reactions, the root is not strength, but fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being replaced. Fear that if familiar values are no longer absolute, they themselves will lose their grounding. When someone cannot accept others living differently, it often shows they have never truly questioned their own value system. They need others to be like them to continue believing they are right. Anyone who steps outside that mold becomes a thorn, not because they are wrong, but because they unknowingly challenge a sense of safety that has long been clung to. Instead of self-reflection, they choose attack. Instead of learning to understand, they choose exclusion. This is the sign of an immature character, a fragile ego, easily shaken and lacking emotional regulation. Such people often respond with extremes not because of the real issue, but because they are triggered by the fear of being invalidated. When encountering someone who lives differently, who believes in something they don't, loves in a way they don't understand, or follows a path they're unfamiliar with, they lose composure because, deep down, they have never practiced standing firm amidst disagreement. They see difference as a threat to identity, and when threatened, they react with rejection as a form of defense. But ironically, that very reaction reveals their inability to control themselves and their poverty of empathy. Two things that are essential to any strong character. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The weak loudly oppose what they don't understand, while the strong quietly observe to understand more deeply." A person who chooses insult over dialogue, avoidance over inquiry, does not show strength. They only prove they are not yet ready to expand their inner world. Sadly, the more they resist difference, the more isolated they become, because the world keeps changing and diversity is inescapable. In trying to preserve the old, they lose the capacity for true connection. If you notice, those who easily dismiss difference often struggle to maintain lasting relationships. They may start out friendly, but as soon as the other reveals a point of divergence, their patience vanishes. This not only hurts others, but impoverishes their own experience of life. For if you cannot hear what you don't believe, or stand near someone you don't understand, how can you ever expand your inner life or truly grow? How a person responds to difference is a mirror reflecting their true inner strength, whether they are ruled by external control or have cultivated an inner stability of their own. 3. How they behave in success. Success is a moment that easily misleads people into believing they've risen above others. It brings recognition, admiration, and sometimes power. But it is precisely in those moments that a person's true character is revealed most clearly. A person of solid character will not let themselves slide down the illusory staircase built from fame and achievement. They understand that no matter how great, success is only a temporary outcome, while how we treat others in that moment is what truly endures. They do not become distant or arrogant, but remain calm, approachable, and respectful toward the relationships that supported them through hardship. Such individuals rarely speak much about what they've accomplished. They let their actions speak and allow others to form the judgment rather than claiming credit themselves. What makes them stand out is not glamour, but their composed demeanor at the peak, like someone who knows this success isn't theirs alone. They remember those who stood beside them, the humble advice they received, the hands that reached out when they had nothing. And for that, they feel gratitude. Not out of politeness, but a deep, sincere thankfulness that keeps them grounded and never sees themselves as the center of the universe. You might see them at an award ceremony, but instead of using the microphone to speak about themselves, they spend most of the time thanking the team, the mentor, or even the critics who helped them grow. They may have just been promoted, but the next day they're still the first to arrive at the office, still nodding respectfully to the security guard, and never issuing orders as if others exist only to serve them. This humility is not weakness, but true strength. The strength of someone who knows their worth without having to display it or compare it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Receive honors without letting them corrupt your soul." People of steady character can do this. They don't let success obscure the fact that they, too, started from nothing, made mistakes, and are still learning like everyone else. When one can remain humble in victory, it means they've overcome one of the greatest temptations, the temptation to believe they are more deserving than others. And when they live with genuine gratitude, it means they've preserved an intact heart amidst the applause. This is a character not diminished by achievement, but polished from within. Such people, no matter where they stand, draw others near, not because they are famous, but because they are trustworthy. There is a type of person who, when they had nothing, was humble, polite, and considerate. But the moment they gain a little success, they change. No longer do they listen, seek advice, or show appreciation. Instead, they walk with self-importance, speak with authority, and behave as if everyone around them is just background to their own spotlight. Success does not make them better, it merely reveals what was left unrefined within. An unchecked ego, latent arrogance, and a lack of inner strength. They let success dictate their behavior, and in doing so, their relationships begin to fracture. These individuals often fail to see that their self-importance is pushing others away. They begin to look down on those who stood by them in tougher times, lose respect for old connections, and focus only on those they believe are useful. They may ignore former collaborators, treat junior staff dismissively, or even forget the promises they once made. In their mind, success proves they are special, and everyone else is peripheral. But what they don't understand is that success is not a shield against ethics, nor a license to mistreat others. When they let the spotlight outshine their character, all that remains is a hollow shell polished by titles. The unsteady are also prone to constant comparison, always needing to prove superiority. They can't accept that their success doesn't make others inferior. As a result, they easily fall into the trap of belittling those who haven't reached their level, or judging others solely by results. Their shallow thinking blinds them to the value of those who contribute quietly. They measure character not by loyalty, kindness, or willpower, but by achievements and social status. This leads to a distorted worldview where, despite the applause, they grow increasingly isolated and alone. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "Do not let your soul be degraded by applause and admiration." But the unsteady often drown in that very admiration. They live for the gaze of others, and when the praise fades, they spiral into bitterness or despair. That's why success is not merely a reward. It is a test. And for those whose inner life has not been fortified, that test often leads to self-betrayal. Not because success is bad, but because they weren't ready to preserve virtue beneath its glare. And once character is eclipsed, it doesn't take long before people stop listening. Not because they aren't skilled, but because they no longer make anyone feel safe or respected. Such a person may gain much, but will keep little, especially the respect and trust of others. 4. How they behave when angry. A person's reaction in a moment of anger is one of the rare occasions when the social mask falls away and their true nature is revealed. There is no more preparation, no carefully chosen words or calculated gestures to make an impression. Only the rawness of emotion and the depth of inner values. That is why how a person behaves in anger is the clearest mirror of their emotional resilience and moral foundation. A person of strong character is not one who never gets angry, but one who, no matter how angry, does not lose themselves. They do not let emotion override reason, nor use inner wounds as an excuse to inflict pain on others. In the heat of anger, all pretense grows thin. If there is selfishness, arrogance, or a lack of control within, it will show immediately through their words and actions. They may yell, speak with cruelty, or deliberately wound others as a form of retaliation. But if inside is someone shaped by emotional discipline and character, then even when insulted, misunderstood, or under pressure, they still maintain restraint. They may be firm, may strongly disagree, but they do not stoop to insults, abuse, or belittlement. They know where the line is and what must never be crossed, regardless of circumstance. Self-control in anger is not an instinct. It is the result of training. A person who understands themselves will not allow a fleeting burst of rage to destroy a meaningful relationship. They are fully aware that anger is temporary, but the consequences of reckless actions can be long-lasting, perhaps even irreversible. That is why they learn to pause before saying what should not be said, learn to breathe before reacting impulsively, and learn to distinguish firmness from aggression. That is emotional strength, not loud, but profoundly trustworthy to those around them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Let your first reaction be calm." This is not easy advice, but it lies at the heart of practical ethics. The one who stays calm under provocation is not weak or submissive, but someone who knows that anger is never a sufficient reason to abandon virtue. In contrast, those who always blame their emotions and let them dictate their actions are often out of control, not frightening, but unpredictable even to themselves. And if you wish to truly understand someone, don't only observe them when they are cheerful and polite. Observe them quietly when they are angry. Because in that moment you see not just emotion, but the value system they live by, whether consciously or not. Anger, when unchecked, becomes a mirror into the soul, one that cannot be faked, hidden, or excused. If behavior in anger reflects character in heat, then behavior after the anger subsides is the clearest evidence of emotional maturity. Everyone loses control sometimes, may say something hurtful, may react from impulse rather than thought, but what truly matters is what they do afterward. A person who takes responsibility for their words and actions during anger, whether intentional or not, is showing real maturity. They do not avoid, rationalize, or pretend nothing happened. They face the consequences and take the initiative to make things right. Someone with a stable inner life does not let pride stop them from apologizing. They understand that an apology does not diminish them, but is a way to restore fairness and trust in a wounded relationship. They are able to sit down, look the person they hurt in the eye, and say, "I was wrong, I lost control, and I am truly sorry." It sounds simple, but it is a profound act of courage. The courage to admit imperfection, the courage to face the pain they caused, the courage to rebuild rather than walk away. And that is a kind of strength no one can fake. In contrast, the emotionally immature act as if nothing serious happened. They stay silent, hope others forget, or worse, blame circumstances, emotions, or the other person for provoking them. They don't apologize, thinking it makes them weak. They stay quiet, believing time will erase everything. But what they don't realize is that every wound left unacknowledged becomes a fracture in the relationship, and over time, trust slowly disappears. Not because the initial anger was too great, but because no one had the courage to repair what was broken. How someone behaves after anger tells us whether they are ready to take responsibility for their own emotions, or still depend on circumstances, always needing someone else to absorb the damage whenever they lose control. Seneca once said, "Anger is momentary, but its consequences can be permanent." And the one who understands this always remains aware of personal responsibility. They are not perfect, but they try, not to maintain an image, but to preserve their integrity. After each outburst, they don't just correct their behavior. They treat it as a chance to train themselves further, to gain better self-mastery, to understand themselves more clearly, and to become gentler with others. It is a quiet, steady journey in which every misstep is not failure, but a step toward emotional maturity. And such people, even if they sometimes cause pain, remain worthy of trust because they do not run from truth, and they are always willing to carry their share of the weight. 5. How they keep secrets. Keeping a secret may seem simple, just not repeating something, but in reality, it is one of the quietest and most profound tests of personal ethics. When someone entrusts you with a private part of themselves, it is not merely the transfer of information, it is an unspoken pact. They believe you are trustworthy enough to protect something they themselves are not ready to face publicly. In that moment, they are placing into your hands a wound, an unhealed memory, a story not yet ready to be revealed. And if you are someone of sound character, you understand that keeping a secret is not about fear of being caught if you slip, but about honoring a moral promise to yourself and to them, that you will not give them reason to regret their trust. A trustworthy person doesn't need reminders to protect someone's privacy. They don't keep secrets out of obligation, but because they have a clear code of conduct. The trust of others is a gift, not a license to be used for personal leverage. That's why they don't repeat it in any form, not by changing names, hiding identities, or saying only one person knows. They don't see secrets as a chance to elevate their status, impress others, or indulge in the pleasure of possessing insider knowledge. They don't seek excuses to vent, nor do they justify revealing something with, "they'll never find out." To them, secrecy is a quiet form of self-respect that needs no declaration. That silence isn't heavy, but it carries weight because it's built on compassion, discernment, and relational clarity. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If something doesn't need to be said, don't say it." This simple line holds the key to how a truly mature person behaves. A trustworthy person doesn't declare their loyalty. They prove it by choosing not to say what they easily could. In a world where oversharing, confessing, and publicizing have become the norm, even encouraged, someone who chooses to withhold, not out of force but of will, becomes incredibly rare. It shows they live not by trends, but by principle. And that principle is to respect the boundaries of others, even when those others are no longer present to enforce them. Trustworthiness cannot be faked. You cannot convince someone you keep your word if your past actions suggest otherwise. And when you are someone who knows how to keep what should be kept, you become a pillar for others. Not because you are clever, but because you are honest. Enduring relationships are not built on loud confessions, but on the quiet things preserved. When others sense they can rely on you, not once, but repeatedly, then you are not just respected, but quietly cherished. And today, that's rarer than talent or success. Those who betray secrets often have ready excuses. "I only told one person. I didn't say their name. It's not important anymore." Or even, "I just needed to get it off my chest." But regardless of the reason, the act reveals something unmistakable, that they are prioritizing their own feelings or interests above the safety and trust that someone else placed in them. They speak what was never theirs to share. Not because it's necessary, but because of selfish motives, the need to feel important, to seem informed or simply to entertain. Whether they realize it or not, every word they release chips away at a bond that was once built on trust. The danger of revealing secrets lies in how often it happens under harmless conditions. A coffee chat, a private conversation, a whispered comment at work. All give the illusion that this is no big deal. But that ease is the problem. Someone who casually discloses another's secret in one setting will likely do it again elsewhere. And if they once betrayed someone's confidence just to make you laugh, to spice up a story, or to draw you to their side in a judgmental dialogue, there's no guarantee they won't do the same to you tomorrow. A person's character is not measured by promises, but by how they behave when no one is watching. Those who reveal secrets not only display selfishness, but also a lack of self-discipline in speech and emotion. They are easily swept up by the moment, tempted by the attention, the spotlight. They don't know how to draw an inner boundary between what should be shared and what should be held. They don't realize that once something is spoken, it no longer belongs to them, and they cannot control how it spreads. This lack of control is evidence that they are not yet mature enough to treat trust as a responsibility. They use secrets as tools, sometimes to connect, sometimes to manipulate, sometimes just to fill silence, but never as something to protect with care. Seneca once wrote, "What is not yours, take it nowhere, not even in words." This is not just a lesson in ownership, it is a lesson in virtue. A person who cannot keep a secret is not someone you can count on in any meaningful relationship. Because if they are willing to exchange someone else's privacy for a moment of attention or a fleeting sense of power, they're operating from ego, not loyalty. And in a world where trust is increasingly rare, that lack of integrity not only costs them the people around them, it slowly disconnects them from themselves. So be cautious of those who easily tell you other people's stories. To them, you may simply be the next audience, and be cautious with yourself if you've ever used a secret to connect or stand out. Because each time you do, you're not just losing someone's trust, you're eroding your own integrity, the one thing more vital than reputation or charm. A strong person is not someone who knows everything, but someone who knows what not to say for the sake of others and for the preservation of their own character. I used to think that to truly judge someone, you needed long-term exposure, years of observation through all kinds of circumstances. But the older I get, the more I realize that some of the smallest details carry more weight than words or appearances. A condescending glance at a server, a joke at the expense of someone not present, or the way someone gets angry and then brushes it off as if nothing happened. These are not signs of a passing mood, but reflections of their inner moral foundation. And what makes me reflect most is that I, too, have been that person. I've carelessly shared stories that weren't mine to tell, reacted poorly in anger, and stayed silent while someone was mocked, just to avoid being dragged into it. But I've come to understand that character isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about facing them and changing. Every day is a chance to live more consciously, to speak less, observe more, and act not from fleeting emotion, but from principle. Because in the end, it's not what we say that defines us, but what we choose to hold back. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next episode. The journey of building character has no final destination, only the quiet choices we make each day. And it is those choices that quietly shape who we become, in the eyes of the world and in the clarity of our own conscience. See you in the next video.